most amazing things that we're seeing in our day is the erosion of free speech. And nowhere is this more demonstrated than in our public schools and colleges. Of course, it's all over social media. We all are aware of just the kind of censorship taking place there. And I'm not going to get into a big discussion about whether that's right or wrong. Suffice it to say that if there's one place that we ought to be able to speak our minds, it's in the public schools. Opinions and theories are being presented as irrefutable fact. And this is just not the case. These are theories. Man-made climate change is a theory. Okay, transgenderism is a theory. And so is critical race theory. It's a theory. Theories, by their nature, by their scientific nature, whether it's the social sciences or the physical sciences, it doesn't matter. These things need to be debated. They need to be explored. They need to be expanded upon, or they need to be eliminated if they're incorrect. And we will never know if we can't have debate upon it. You're supposed to be able to go and exchange ideas freely without being labeled, insulted, and castigated for having an opinion. So I wrote a blog about this recently. This is the second reason why we really need to be thinking about rethinking our support of the public school system. And I tell a little story. I say, here's the scenario. It's a warm September afternoon, an 8th grade social studies class. A very energetic and charismatic social studies teacher is giving a lecture. There's a picture above his desk, and it's the recent Democratic public candidate for the presidency. We're going to be having an election happen, a presidential election happen in just a few months. And this teacher is kind of spouting all of his opinions about his candidate and why this candidate is going to save the country. We're going to enter a new era of peace and prosperity and unity in the country. And this candidate is obviously going to be going to win the presidency and serve for the next 8 years. I wonder if anybody has heard a teacher speak like this in their lifetime, talk openly about their political views. Well, I have. That scenario that I described happened to me, and it was back in 1976 when I was just an 8th grader, and I was a staunch Republican, and so being a very precocious kid and somebody who had, kind of cut their teeth on Watergate at the tender age of 10 and 11, I listened to the Watergate hearings with my parents, had joined in discussion with them at a very early age. I was really politically interested in what was going on. And so I'd already been having discussions like this with my friends. And, this was a big event in my formative years. And so I didn't have a problem speaking up and disagreeing with my teacher right there. The interesting thing is I didn't flunk that class. I got an A in social studies, and I wasn't dinged by my teacher because I had the courage to talk about something that he had brought up in class. And I didn't lose any friends over it either. I probably wasn't the most popular kid in school, but I don't remember that any of my friends said a word to me about how, stupid I was or wrong I was, or any of those things. And I wasn't growing up, obviously, in a bubble, in a conservative bubble by any means in Southern California. So that teacher's name was Mr. Kindig, and I still remember him. I enjoyed his lessons, and I learned a great deal from him. And that candidate was Jimmy Carter back in 1976. He was picking up the reins from, of course, a failed presidency and then a lame duck presidency a couple of years under Gerald Ford. And so, of course, Mr. Kindig was hopeful, and I think we all were. But we all know how that turned out. Mr. Kiddig was a great teacher, but even at the age of 13, I knew that he really didn't have any right to be spouting his political opinions in class. And he knew that he was a very influential teacher, and that at this very formative age, for most kids, that he had a great influence over them. Well, those were the good old days. Those were the days when kids could go talk about things, just about anything, and have discussions, even heated discussions about things, and really disagree. And of course, kids don't have enough reasoning ability to, and I didn't either at that age. I was really just parroting the things that I'd heard from my parents in my own home. Of course, my parents were not, they were shocked and extremely disappointed in Richard Nixon, and thought he should be impeached. These were just very complex issues. And so, on we go. But even so, doing what we did in those days, having the freedom to speak, didn't lose you friends. You went back out on the playground and played Foursquare or whatever you were doing at the time, and nobody thought ill of you. Is there anybody out there that thinks that can happen today in schools? Could an eighth grader or a kid in high school openly say they do not believe in climate change, man-made climate change? Could a kid openly say that they don't believe that we should be supporting gender dysphoria, people with gender dysphoria in girls' sports, for instance? Is that even allowed? No, that's not allowed. In the public schools these days, there is no freedom of speech for our kids. They simply have to hunker down and listen to whatever the teacher says and agree and write the papers that he wants to see written, and never express a dissenting view at the risk of being labeled all kinds of nasty things. Just recently, my daughter-in-law applied for a master's program in marriage and family therapy. And she was warned by a friend of hers that just finished the program that there would be a lot of support for alternative sexualities and all kinds of, things that my daughter-in-law doesn't believe in. And most people in the country, I believe, of a majority of people, still don't believe in much of the transgender, much of the LGBTQ radical agenda. And she was told that she would have to just not speak up, or that she would be flunked, she would be kicked out of the program. And even through her interview process, she simply had to agree and go along with it, or she would not have made it into her program. This is wrong. This is wrong, to shut people down and not allow any discussion to take place, to not allow for any dissenting views on certain issues regarding, especially when a person's going into a field such as marriage and family therapy. It's just completely wrong. So again, this is an excellent reason for us to rethink our support of public education. Even if you are a person who is in the majority of thought in the country, or that seems to be going along and believes in these things, you should respect the fact that the pendulum can swing the other way at some point. And just because today there are the loud voices in the media, the loud voices in academia are determining what is being said and what is being discussed, doesn't mean it will always be that way. Now, it begs the question, how did we get there, and why did this happen? Well, I'm going to be talking a lot about this because I have been kind of focusing in some of my research, reading some books on, I think, why we have lost a lot of our ability to simply communicate. And it has to do with too much screen time. Literally, what happens when we are constantly staring at screens and we are not conversing, and we are not looking up and looking at different opinions. We stay in this little technological bubble that we create. It literally shrinks our brains. We literally lose gray matter in our minds. And this is causing, in essence, brain damage, an inability to process information, an inability to remember things, an inability to make logical, to come to logical conclusions, look at facts and figures. The use of screens and the media teaches us to literally stay out of the intellectual parts of our brains and be completely influenced by the feeling parts of our brains. If we continue down this trajectory of shutting down all real learning, and especially the learning that's supposed to take place in our institutions of learning, we are not going to be able to keep our democracy. This is why I am so often saying also that schools are no longer academic institutions. Schools are social welfare institutions. They do not grow brain matter. They are simply there to create little activists and to foster this false compassion that the left has created. If we don't do something about this, this is going to be a much bigger problem than we have right now. So what can you do about this? Well, the most important thing is to get off the screens. It really is. It's to decide, make some family policy. If there's going to be, weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth to make a policy such as this. But when your kids walk in the door, say, we're going to put our phones in this box. I'm going to put my phone in this box. We're not going to turn on the TV. We're not going to play video games. We're going to sit down and have a discussion. We're going to choose a good book to read. We're going to go for a walk. We're going to make dinner together. We're going to go exercise together. We're going to go serve in our community. There's hundreds of things that you can do as a family. But the main thing is get educated on some of this stuff. Read some books on what screens are doing to minds. Share those books with your kids, and then make a plan to overcome this scourge that is happening in our country. The scourge not only of screens, but the scourge of not having open discussions. Challenge your children to use fact and logic when you have discussions. Pose a thorny question to them. Challenge some of their assumptions. Make them think. And you should be thinking too. We should all be thinking hard and discussing the things that are problems in our society. We should be talking about it. I'm not really sure that we can reverse the things that are happening in the public system. I don't believe that we can, and that's why I'm kind of on the soapbox all the time to encourage people to think about an alternative for their family. Even if we could reverse it, the most important thing for you to do personally, together with your family, is to improve your own intellect, is to take the time to read and make those changes that will truly grow your brain and give you something to talk about. That's my challenge. Make a plan and do it.